Kenna, could you tell us a little bit about your work in Mexico?
Yeah, of course. Before starting working with Tactical Tech, I was engaged for a long time with many people, many organizations in Mexico, indigenous and non-indigenous NGOs, and we were working basically around issues of access to education, indigenous rights, human rights, sustainable development, and political participation. And my main interest has always been how to um, um, improve intercultural dialogue between Mexican mainstream society and indigenous communities for the
You're
benefit of
indigenous.
the.
You're indigenous
I
yourself.
am indigenous. I am of Maya ancestry.
I see.
My parents and my grandparents, all of them spoke Maya,
Really?
and I speak Maya as well, but my fluency is very poor.
Okay.
But I'm improving. I have to I have to learn. I have to claim back the language of my ancestors.
So, what's the feeling of the indigenous in Mexican society today? I mean, do they feel deprived, left out, or wanting to join in, or what?
It's a very complex situation because, on the one hand, indigenous communities have the same status, the same than the same rights that any other Mexicans, but they have very different lifestyles. For instance, many communities have their own authorities, they have their own ways of solving conflicts, and they also have the particular forms of relationship with nature, with the land. They have their own religion that at the same time is not only about the supernatural but about the community
I see.
and the different types of arrangements that people living together have in the local community. So, to some extent, many of these people they recognize themselves as Mexicans, but at the same time, they feel that they are not quite the same that other Mexicans. And when they move from the local communities to some other places, they are very often discriminated against. The language issue is also very important, and many languages, many indigenous languages that are well spoken throughout the country, they are now facing a gradual extinction because the language is seen as something that is worthless, something that doesn't have a function, practical use in Mexican society. And many indigenous NGOs and non-indigenous NGOs as well are working together to kind of claim back the language and to develop new means, new media that will help different communities to recover this sense of pride and to claim the right to speak their own language and to have their own forms of organization.
You've been into anthropology, and how does it feel to, be an insider and outsider at the same time? Because on the one hand you have this identity of the indigenous past, and on the other hand you have anthropology, which is a tool to study the indigenous.
It's a very difficult balance, that's for sure. But I think that, having been an anthropologist for almost half of my life, or one third of my life, I can proudly say that I'm a native anthropologist, and I am as Maya as I am an anthropologist. The key, I guess, is to do research critically, engaging with communities and with their concerns, doing research that is ethically based and that has a very clear attachment to whatever people are interested in and the sort of issues that they will benefit from. And then you can go and apply your knowledge, this particular professional knowledge, and also try to develop the categories of thought that will, with the time, be helpful in creating a philosophy of science, of indigenous science, in a sense.
You were mentioning that the involvement and the growth of the Zapatistas and your own role in that. How does one understand, say, this movement from half a world away beyond the media stereotype?
That's a very interesting question. I guess that one has to understand the Zapatista movement and the Zapatista uprising in the context of a long history in the building of the Mexican nation. And in that sense, there was a historical debt that the nation state in Mexico owed to the Zapatista, to the indigenous communities of the country. And the Zapatista were very powerful in presenting a clear message, a message of rebellion that was at the same time a message that make the national society in Mexico ashamed of the neglect, of the marginalization, of the discrimination that for so many centuries indigenous communities had suffered in Mexico. So the Zapatista, in that sense, is a very good example of an info activist type of movement. Not so much because of the use of the technology, because I mean it has been said that internet plays an important role in the way the Zapatista presented their claims. I think that this is true, but only to a certain extent. And I think that more than the Zapatista were their followers, the ones who used the internet to spread the message. But the message was very clear. The message was a message of rebellion, of challenge, but at the same time it was a message based on a fundamental truth. And the form to present that truth, of being strategic in addressing the good feelings of Mexicans, the way of appealing to the national consciousness, the national heart, by telling them the history and by telling them stories that would reflect that discrimination, that marginalization, and make them feel ashamed of the way they were treating the indigenous communities. That was the key for me. And the language that they used, which was a language that it was non-ideological but more appealing to the common sense of people and poetic, that was the crucial element that made the Zapatista campaign, the Zapatista movement, a very successful story in the use of media.
So, how does your current work and campaigning tie up with your anthropological past? Present, I shouldn't say past.
Yeah. Well, it's my professional interests are very well related to campaigns. The campaign that I have been involved for a long time now is the building of intercultural dialogue between the Mexican National Society and indigenous communities, particularly the communities of my homeland, of the Yucatan Peninsula. In this, I have been working with many people, with many of my friends, and my anthropological research has been a collaboration between their interests and one agenda that goes beyond, that can be communicated to other peoples, to other movements, to other indigenous organizations. So that's, I guess, where my anthropological identity and my native identity come together and feed into many possibilities of engagement, further engagement, not only inside Mexico but outside Mexico with other groups, with other peoples.
And one last question, this is your first trip to India, how do you kind of see it?
I love it. I really love India. I love the food, I love the people. I think that this is a wonderful country, a fertile land, and a place that has an amazing future waiting for it, and I would really like to return, not only once, but as many times as I can.
I hope it happens. Thanks a lot, and
Thank you.
thanks for the insights.